You're hemorrhaging money. Not in the way you think. Not on vacations or fancy dinners or impulse buys you actually enjoy. You're losing it quietly, consistently, on things that feel responsible, things that feel smart, things that feel like you're finally being careful with your money. And that's the trap nobody warns you about. Let me paint you a picture. You're standing in the store. You see two options. One costs $40, one costs $12. And your brain does that little calculation, that responsible adult math, and you grab the $12 one. You feel good. You feel disciplined. You walk out of that store genuinely proud of yourself. But here's what actually happens over the next 6 months. That $12 thing breaks. You replace it, it breaks again, you replace it again, and suddenly you've spent $36 on something that never worked as well as the $40 version would have. You didn't save money, you spent more. And you did it while feeling responsible the entire time. That feeling right there, that's what we need to talk about today. There's a concept that financial experts and behavioral economists have studied for decades, and it comes down to this simple truth. The cost of something cheap is almost never just its price tag. There's a hidden tax on every low-quality purchase you make, and most people never calculate it because it shows up slowly, in pieces, disguised as normal life. Now, before we go deeper, I want to mention something. If you've been struggling with these kinds of money decisions, if you feel like you're working hard and doing your best but somehow never getting ahead, there's a program linked in the video description below that tackles exactly this. The people going through it right now are seeing real shifts in how they manage, think about, and grow their money. And spots are genuinely limited because of how personalized it is. Most people who need it most will scroll past it. Don't be that person. Check it out when you're done here. Now back to where we were. The $12 thing breaking, that's just the beginning. Think about the last time you bought cheap shoes. Not stylish, not expensive, just cheap. You probably told yourself, shoes are shoes. And maybe the first week felt fine. But then something starts happening. Your feet hurt a little after long days. You don't connect it at first, you just think you're tired. But it's the shoes. Poor support, thin soles, cheap materials that don't actually hold your foot correctly. So now you're not just spending money on replacing shoes more often, you're walking around in low-grade discomfort that drains your energy, affects your mood, and over time can actually create real physical problems that cost you doctor visits, insoles, and medication. The real cost of cheap shoes? It's not the price on the tag. It's everything downstream from that decision. This is what I want you to really feel right now, not just understand intellectually, but actually feel. You have been working hard, you've been trying to be responsible, you've been saying no to yourself constantly, cutting corners, choosing the cheaper option because you're trying to be smart. And the cruel irony is that all of that sacrifice, all of that discipline has actually been costing you more. That's not your fault. Nobody taught us this. Nobody sat us down and explained the difference between the price of something and the cost of something. Those are two completely different numbers, and only one of them actually matters. Let's talk about something most people never think about: time. When you buy something cheap that breaks, you don't just spend money to replace it. You spend time. You spend the time driving back to the store, or waiting for the new delivery, or setting it up again, or figuring out what went wrong. And your time is worth something. If you value your time at even $15 an hour, and you waste 2 hours every time a cheap product fails you, that's $30 of invisible cost added to every cheap purchase that doesn't work. Stack that up across a year, across 5 years. People who understand this intuitively are the ones who seem to effortlessly build wealth. It's not luck, it's math that most people were never taught. Here's where it gets really uncomfortable. The areas where cheap purchasing does the most damage are the areas most people assume they're being smart. Let's go through them. Cheap food. This one is personal because so many of us buy the lowest cost groceries as an act of financial survival, and I completely understand that. But when cheap food means highly processed, nutritionally empty, inflammation-causing products, the downstream costs are significant. More illness, less energy, lower productivity, higher medical bills. The person who spends a little more on genuinely nourishing food often saves dramatically on everything that comes after. Cheap tools. Whether that's physical tools for a trade or digital tools for a business, buying the cheap version that barely works means the job takes longer, the result is worse, and you often end up buying the better version anyway after wasting money on the inferior one. People who build real financial stability understand that the right tool, purchased once, is almost always cheaper over time. Cheap advice. This one hits different. Getting free advice from someone who doesn't actually know what they're talking about, following outdated tips from random internet strangers, making huge financial decisions based on surface-level information you Googled at midnight. This is where people lose not hundreds but thousands. Sometimes tens of thousands, sometimes more. The cost of bad financial guidance isn't just the bad decision itself, It's the years of momentum you lose, the compound interest you forfeit, the opportunities you miss while you're trying to recover. And now I want to flip this completely. Let's talk about what happens when you stop making cheap decisions and start making smart ones. This is where the emotional math completely reverses. When you buy something quality, something that actually works, something built to last, a strange and wonderful thing happens. You stop thinking about it. It just works. It sits in the background of your life, reliably doing its job while you move forward. That's not a small thing. The mental bandwidth you waste managing cheap, broken, unreliable things in your life is absolutely enormous. When those things are replaced with things that work, you get that mental space back. And mental space is where clarity lives, where good decisions are made, where real growth happens. Think about the people in your life who seem financially ahead, who seem calm about money, who seem to have it together in ways that feel almost unfair. Here's the pattern you'll find if you look closely. They buy fewer things, but what they buy, they choose carefully. They think about total cost, not just sticker price. They think about how long something will last, how much value it will generate, how much time and energy it will save them over its lifetime. That's it. That's the whole difference. It's not income. It's not luck. It's not some secret they were born with. It's a decision-making framework that most people were simply never taught. And that framework is learnable. That's the hopeful part of everything I'm telling you right now. Let me give you a really concrete way to think about this that you can use immediately. Before any purchase, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what is this actually going to cost me over the next year, not just today? Second, what will happen if this fails or underperforms? And what will I spend to deal with that? Third, is there a version of this that solves the problem once, instead of repeatedly? Those 3 questions will save you more money than any coupon or sale ever will, because they shift your focus from the price of the thing to the cost of the decision. And those are 2 completely different things that produce 2 completely different financial realities. Here's something that the most financially successful people understand at a bone-deep level. Cheap is a feeling. Quality is a result. Cheap feels responsible in the moment. Quality feels irresponsible in the moment. But when you measure them over time, over a year, over 5 years, over a decade, quality almost always wins. Not because expensive things are automatically better. That's not what I'm saying. But because things that actually solve your problem, that last, that don't require constant replacement or repair, generate a return that cheap alternatives simply cannot match. This is the COI to ROI shift. The cost of inaction, meaning continuing to make cheap decisions that feel responsible, versus the return on investment of making genuinely smart decisions that create real compounding value in your life. The person who spends more on things that work isn't wasting money. They're investing in a life with less friction, less stress, fewer setbacks, and more forward momentum. Every single dollar spent on something that genuinely performs returns multiple dollars over time. That's not a feeling. That's documented, studied, measurable reality that people who understand money know to be true. You don't have to keep learning this the hard way. You've already learned it the hard way enough times. The broken appliance, the failed cheap solution, the budget option that turned into an expensive problem. You know this feeling. You've lived it. And you deserve to stop living it. Which brings me to something important before you close this video. The program in the description isn't for everyone. Honestly, if you're totally fine with where your finances are, if you feel clear and confident and like every dollar you spend is truly working for you, this probably isn't your next step. But if you watched this video and felt something, if any of this landed like a truth you've been carrying without quite having the words for it, then that program was built for that feeling. For the person who is done making the same mistakes in a new year, the people inside it are making real decisions differently, and it is showing up in their real numbers. The link is in the description. You already know whether this is for you. Stop buying cheap, start buying smart. Your future self is living in the world created by the decisions you make right now.